Hi, everybody. I am Shayna Weber, and this is the Emerging Screenwriters interview series. And today we are talking to the lovely Dani Hanks. Hi, Dani.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for chatting with us today. Let's get right into it. Let's talk about what you're watching now.
I actually just finished the first season of The Studio, which was absolutely hilarious. Other things that I'm watching are I just watched Adults, which was the show set in New York City. It's really funny. And I've been catching up on Hacks as well. So, been watching a lot of comedy recently, keeping it light.
I love that. So, what do you think shows like The Studio or even Hacks has? How do you think that has either challenged you in your writing, or how have you pivoted with these kinds of new comedies coming out? Like, what do you think you've learned from these shows?
One thing that I've learned from these shows is that there are a lot of different kinds of comedy. Comedy can be dark, comedy can be light. I think when I first started writing, I knew what dramedy was, but I really associated it with the hour-long space. And so knowing that there's a lot of space to play in the half-hour world as well is really exciting, that it's not just all sitcom and hard comedy, that there's a lot of variety in there.
That's a great thing about comedy. I mean, with everything, there's room for everyone. There's room for every kind of humor or dramatic moment or tearjerker or emotion, all of that. So yes, you are correct. And
Yeah,
then
at this point, it seems like genres are more of a suggestion and kind of guidelines that you can get to relate somebody to your story, but they're not prescriptive in the way that they used to be.
yeah, exactly. And then what is like when you think back to when you first started kind of figuring out that maybe you wanted to write or that, stories mattered, what was a show or a movie that you saw or a book even that you feel like was pivotal for you in your journey?
I think I've watched all 8 seasons of House at least 4 times now. And that show, I just grew up watching it. I loved the depth of the characters, the way that they both changed and didn't change over time. I feel like it taught me a lot of the fundamentals of television, where you have these characters going through these revelations, but they don't actually progress. Like there's, especially looking at House, House is going to be House all through the 8 seasons. And if you change him, you change the fundamental DNA of the show. So House was definitely the series that got me into dramedy. I've always loved science, and so that was a way for me to explore the medical side of things as well as the TV side of things, and was really known for its characters at the time. So I feel like I grew up wanting to be like Cameron and 13 and all of these great people. And now that I'm older, I look back and I'm like, yeah, I could write like that. I could write something like House.
Awesome. I have not thought about House in so long. So yeah, thinking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, it was one of those shows that main character was sort of the anti-hero sometimes, and that was very different.
It seemed like that was a whole era of television. You know, you had House, you had Breaking Bad, kind of this anti-hero evolution. And I think, at least for some of us, it affected our romantic interests in a less healthy way, but affected my love of TV in a very healthy way.
Do expand on that.
I mean, I just grew up and I thought that, the lovable narcissist was something that I wanted to be with. And very, very quickly learned in my early 20s, actually, no, dating someone like House is a terrible idea. I'm not going to do that.
Oh my God, I love that. Yes, very true. Very, very true. Okay, so let's dive into we call it your origin story. So tell us how you began creatively, when you knew you wanted to be a writer, and then when you sort of found your niche.
I grew up in Porterville, California, which is between Bakersfield and Fresno. And I was a bit of like a shy, nerdy tomboy and teacher's pet. And my mom actually ran a pathology lab. So every day after school, I would go to the lab and I would be handling human organs, which I thought was really cool, but all the other kids thought was kind of weird. So I didn't really have a whole lot of friends. And in order to try to force me to make some friends, my parents had me audition for the local musical at the Barn Theater, the little theater in town. And with my first show, I just got bit by the bug, absolutely fell in love with storytelling. Ended up getting an agent and a manager down in LA and started auditioning for
Mm.
commercial and TV projects as an actor. And I ended up getting into NYU Tisch for drama. And right after graduating from NYU Tisch, I actually came down with a virus that had me bedbound for about 8 months. And in those 8 months, not really being able to pursue my career as full force as I had hoped getting right out of college, it really made me think about what I wanted my career to be. And I realized that my path as an actor, what it would have been was not what I wanted. I didn't want to be looking the way that I am, the 16-year-old comedic relief in some TV show until I was 35. I wanted to tell my own stories. I wanted to be in charge of the stories. And I wanted to see more people like myself, powerful women on screen. So I started directing and writing. And a web series that I directed won a Webby and got into the Banff World Media Festival and was subsequently optioned by FilmRise to become a TV show. And when I was working with FilmRise, an amazing executive there, Bianca Serafini, who's now in the video game world, she basically sat me down and she said, "You're a writer. I don't know what you're," because I was there saying, "Oh, I'm a non-exec or I'm a non-writing producer. I'm just helping." And she was like, "You're doing all of the parts of writing except for just sitting down and putting words on a page. So start doing that." And that's what really got me into writing my own original ideas. And since then, she brought me on to develop a TV show at RKO. I won the 2024 Josephson Entertainment Fellowship at the Austin Film Festival, and I'm currently developing a feature film with them. I've done a number of programs like STOW, Disability Belongs, and the WGA East Support Staff Training Program. Just this month, I'm actually really excited. I'll be joining the New York Foundation of the Arts Artists as Entrepreneurs program. And even then, I still haven't given up on the directing side. So I've still been directing. I am directing the web series that won at Austin Film Festival. The script that won, I'll be directing that later this year. And I directed my first commercial last year. And the dream is to really become what I believe is the auteur of television, which is the showrunner that directs. You think of Mike White, Mike Flanagan, the Duffer Brothers, these people that create these incredible stories, and they're able to have such a hand in it from writing all the way through to production and directing. That is just the dream for me.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot going on. And the question that popped in my brain was, how do you keep yourself going? How do you keep this confidence that you have? What's your support system like? Like, who's around you? How do you keep yourself not necessarily motivated? I feel like you're naturally motivated, but like, how do you keep the momentum for yourself going and that feeling of, I can do this?
A number of years ago, I hired a career coach who I still work with today. And she's no longer in the entertainment industry. It's Joanna Bowser, but she is absolutely incredible and has been one of the greatest supporters, as well as one of the people who will call me out when I'm not doing the best of my ability. And one thing that she said to me that really sticks with me whenever I get rejections that are really hard or I have a really hard day, she was like, if you knew that you were just 100 rejections away from one big yes that would change your career, or 100 emails away from making the connection that would get you your next job, wouldn't you want to get through those as quickly as possible? And so anytime I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, I really don't want to write this cold email to this producer that I saw was doing a panel and might be willing to talk to me, or following up with a manager that I met a year ago, right? I think, if I want to be a showrunner, I need to get through those 100 rejections as fast as possible. And that for me has been the driving force that's kept me going.
That's amazing advice and such a visual way of looking at it and putting that in front of you. I always think of when you said that, I think of that visual of the guy digging, like the two pictures of the people digging, and like this person quit and they were this close and they quit. And it's like, what? Yeah. So I love that advice. I mean, that's definitely something that a lot of people I think can grab onto and use themselves. So thank you for sharing that. When you look back at some of the accolades and the awards that you've won, let's talk about how each of those has changed you. What did you learn from each of those that maybe you didn't know before? How do you feel like you've evolved from each of those, the Banff and then the Austin? I guess let's talk about those two.
I think our society is really obsessed with this concept of overnight success, right? When we look at these big stories of like the Duffer Brothers or George Lucas, what we see is the overnight success. Oh, they put it all on the line and they risked it all and it all paid off. But what we don't see is the years of rejection and stick to itiveness and all the building blocks that they had to go up until that point. So from Banff, I think I went into it a little starry eyed, thinking this is going to be the big thing. I'm going to get staffed. I'm going to direct a feature. I'm going to have all of these accolades come out of it. And learning that every time you meet a benchmark, there's just another one waiting for you. Mm-hmm. And that was the same with Austin. And both of them excellent festivals, realizing that this is, an industry of relationships, and everybody that you're going to meet at Banff, at Austin, at any festival that you go to, that's just the beginning of the conversation. And those relationships are going to grow over time. So if you can put in the time to nurture those relationships, keep in touch with people, celebrate them on their wins, wish them a happy birthday, and don't be afraid to ask favors or send out a new script. Those are things that the programs that I've been in as well have taught me. Mm-hmm. Being in Disability Belongs, they really make an effort to introduce you to all of these excellent executives and decision makers that are either supportive of the disability community or disabled themselves, but it's all on you to reach out. And I kind of got a reputation for sending the most follow-up emails my year. And I had people in my cohort asking me, even to this day, how do you follow up with people? And again, it's that thing of like, if I knew that I was 100 emails away, mm-hmm. this is one more that I'm ticking down that list, and I know that one of them is going to hit. So, people say it's not a business of who you know, it's a business of who knows you. And it's really your job to get yourself on in the mind of as many people as possible, because then when an opportunity comes up, maybe and if an opportunity comes up and it's not right for you, my big thing is I push it forward to the people in my network. Mm-hmm. There have been so many times in which I've spread a program or a job that I've seen on LinkedIn, or this showrunner is looking for scripts, and maybe it's not me, but somebody else fits the bill, because I really believe that we rise together. We grow with the people alongside you. So all of these competitions, ironically, have taught me that competition isn't the thing. Yeah. Who is on your side is just as important as who wins, and to support each other as we move forward.
We were just talking about the same thing in our ISA meeting this morning, about how writers aren't competition for each other, because every voice is different. Everything that you're interested in is different from somebody else. So if something isn't right for you, you should be sharing it with your fellow community of writers and people that can handle it. And it's true, we all rise together. So I love that. We're in so much alignment in that way. Exactly. Yeah, competition is great, but we're not really competing against each other. You're only competing against yourself.
I do meet so many emerging writers who are afraid of sharing their ideas because mm-hmm. they're afraid that their ideas are going to get stolen. When the reality is, the script that won Austin, I've met at least 3 other people who have a script just like it. Mm-hmm. And the difference is just execution. And that's not to say that my script is better or my script is all of our takes on the same exact idea are going to be different. And at the end of the day, you should be sharing your ideas, and you should be, looking at what's in the zeitgeist and pulling from all of these stories that are in the news to inform your writing. because your take on it is going to be so different from whoever else is writing, quote unquote, the exact same idea.
Right. Well, let's talk about your take. Let's talk about your voice. How would you describe your voice? What kinds of stories are you trying to tell? What, childhood trauma are you trying to work out in your stories? We always say that. But like, how would you describe yourself as what stories are you telling?
My whole goal as a storyteller is to explore lives that I wouldn't otherwise be able to live.
Hmm.
I feel like I come to this with a genuine curiosity for humanity and the human condition. And being queer and disabled, I want to show people that we're not really all that different. Um, so I tend to write about underrepresented characters, but in a way that people can actually hear the differences and hear how it's not scary
Mm-hmm.
by putting them in relatable situations, and having them go through these universal human struggles, like struggling to find out who they really are, or disappointed with who they've become, or not understanding what they really want, which I think is something that, regardless of queerness, disability, ethnicity, are things that we all struggle with as people. And then having the sprinkle of, yes, this character is also disabled and queer, and they are just like you. So my stories tend to be either lighter hours or darker half hours, kind of in the hacks or Kevin can F himself um, realm. And they tend to be about these strong female characters, strong queer characters, as well as like found families, unexpected people, ensembles coming together and uh, really exploring what it's like to be human together, and finding solace in a place that they didn't expect to.
When you were growing up, or, even now, do you feel like you see yourself on screen?
Oh yeah. I mean, that was basically me growing up watching House. I was watching 13, who is this proud, badass bisexual woman. And even before I knew what I didn't know that I was bisexual at the time, but there were, rumors in Catholic school that I was a lesbian, and I didn't even know what that word meant. And same thing going around in high school. And so, you know, being able to watch her and be like, wow, that's really cool. I didn't even know that you could like boys and girls, right? And having that be part of my identity, um, growing up, I do feel like I see myself in stories. I think that acquiring a disability in my early 20s really changed things for me.
Hmm.
It made me realize that while I see more of that side of myself, I don't see a lot of people on screen that have um, a chronic illness. I mean, ironically, 13 does have a chronic illness. So, foreshadowing, maybe that was just kismet for me to be idolizing that character from a young age. But I think that that's what drew me to start writing my own stories instead of just acting, is because I saw this struggle that I was going through, and I was like, nobody is talking about this. There's nothing in media that prepared me for going through that, other than maybe, stories that have a terminal end, right? I think we have a lot of stories about these terminal illnesses where it's a short period of immediate distress, and then it's over and the characters are left reeling with the consequences of that. But we don't have a lot of stories about chronically ill characters who are going through their day-to-day lives dealing with something that's difficult on top of the rest of life. And I feel like that's a really important story that we haven't seen.
I would agree. I think that when you're living with pain or a chronic illness and you look like you're fine, everyone assumes that you're fine. And it doesn't mean that you're
Exactly.
fine. It means that you're just really good at showing that you're fine.
The big thing with chronic illness as well is that oftentimes people are seeing people who are chronically ill on their best days, and
Yeah,
they're not seeing them on their worst days because we're not getting out of bed.
right.
That's kind of a side of things that we don't really get a lens into. And I would be very excited to bring that perspective to a writer's room.
I mean, you're also extremely interesting as a human being outside of writing. Can you talk about, I mean, you and I have talked about this in the past, but like, you have your day job and then you also have your friends behind you. Can you just talk about yourself and kind of like the world that swirls around you outside of what's on the page?
So I have been working for, gosh, about 15 years now, ever since I was a teenager in the medical field. Because my parents did run a pathology lab and my mom was a pathologist. One summer, one of our managers in the lab was going on vacation, and instead of hiring someone, they decided to train me. And so I am a what is called a histology technician or a histotech. And that means that I before have worked with human tissue. I now work with animal tissue.
Mm.
It means that I work with primarily mouse and rat tissue, sectioning it paper thin so that it can go on a slide for research in studies like treatment for COVID, cancers, Alzheimer's, etc. And the pathologist can take those slides, read them under the microscope, and figure out on a cellular level what's going on.
Mm.
And that's kind of ironic because behind me, if for anybody watching, I do have pet rats. I did get the rats after I started doing the animal research. Fortunately, I guess I know exactly how large their brains are, so they do not comprehend what I do for a living. Although if they could, I think they would be pretty shocked, to be honest. And then outside of that, I mean, I am pretty active online in the chronic illness community because I have what's called MECFS, which is very similar to long COVID. There is a theory that long COVID leads to MECFS, but it's essentially some kind of post-viral illness. And ever since COVID hit, there have been suddenly hundreds of thousands of people that have the same condition that I have, and are suddenly coming to terms with this life change. And so I try to speak with people about my experience, what's helped me, and give them, as much guidance and support as I can that I wish I had had in the early years of my condition. And yeah, other than that, I love baking. I play really complicated board games. If anybody knows what Gloomhaven is, call me because let's play a campaign together. And I embroider because apparently I'm just an old lady at heart.
Embroidery's hard, man. Is that behind you embroidery or is that just a
Oh God, no. I wish it was. I had the idea of embroidering completely over it, but the
yeah.
amount of hours that it would take would be way beyond what I'm willing to do. No, I embroider small things.
Okay.
I find that especially on things like Zoom calls, it helps keep my hands busy while not being on my phone.
Yeah.
And so I can be fully present with somebody while also, feeling like I'm doing something.
Yeah, that makes sense. I love that. Maybe I should start embroidering. Let's get back to the writing part of it. So tell me about, I always like to ask people about their process of how they begin a story, how they take it. Like what are your first steps and when do you actually like get on the page and how much outlining do you do and do you do cards and do you figure out character first? Do you figure out plot first? Like what's your process?
Most of the time it comes to me as a premise. So, for example, one of the most recent things that I was working on, I was at my day job listening to a podcast about true crime. And I was like, what if there was a TV show like Supernatural, but for true crime? And it's these two women going across the country solving cold cases in the same way that Supernatural was, but for monsters. And so I start with the premise and then I try to think, okay, what are the most interesting or unfit characters to
Right.
put in that premise? Like, what's the worst possible person that could be doing this? Or, and, then I feel like for me, themes, and all of those things come out of the character's journey. So at first, I don't really know what it's about. And then as the premise develops, I see the characters more. I start putting these characters up against each other. It becomes clear, oh, this is about hope and whether it's futile and whether, what we're dealing with in day-to-day life is whether it's worth having any hope, right? Or whether we have control over what happens to us in life. So these bigger themes come out from the characters themselves. As far as process, I am big on outlining. That's one of the great things that these programs that I've been a part of have given me is they have given me over time a process that I've developed and feel confident in. So for example, gave me a lot of great character based opportunities to look at and say, okay, this is how I build a character. I have these worksheets that I work on, and I pick somebody from my life that I feel like is the voice, and I pull that up while I'm writing. So I'm really creepy and looking at one of my friends and being like, how would they say this? But it's really effective. And then, you know, I figure out what's the worst way to put these characters against each other. And I spend most of my time outlining. I will sort out the three different plot lines kind of separately because I do a lot of ensembles. So for the most part, they are separate characters in each. And then I weave them and I get feedback on that until I feel like it's really solid. And then in order to practice the atmosphere of a TV room and to practice kind of build up that writer's muscle, I will force myself to write those pages as fast as I can. So, yeah, the last pilot that I wrote was in 3 days. I basically spent like 6 weeks outlining. And then I was like, all right, I'm writing this in 3 days because I figure, you know, when I do get in a writer's room, that's going to be the most important part. I'm going to have a week to get out 30 to 60 pages and I have to be able to do it. Otherwise, you know, why am I there? So that's my process. And then, of course, I go back with revisions. I was fortunate to take one class that really changed the way that I edit because I think editing can be really hard for some people. If you don't have a process, it's hard to figure out what notes am I taking? What notes am I not? Which ones have I already incorporated? So what I do is I make sure that my outline accurately reflects what's on the page. I then have my notes document and my outline document in two separate columns on my laptop. And I put all of the notes in actionable steps into the outline. And then I just, from the top of that, I go through and incorporate them into the script. And for me, that's been the most effective way and has really demystified the process so that I'm able to do it quickly. But yeah, obviously, I'm very type A. I'm very planning and organization oriented. So I do sometimes envy writers who can just come up with an idea and write and figure out where it goes because, man, I think I would be shitting my pants out of fear. It's like, where am I going? Where's the bus taking me? Get me off this ride.
But it is really scary to some people, to a certain extent, to force yourself to just write that script in 3 days. And so I wanted to ask you, what goes through your brain when you're doing that? Or do you like block out those, you know, that like annoying voice in your head? How do you do that? Like, how do you get yourself to just balls to the wall, just go?
It helps to give yourself a deadline. You know, funny enough, the first script that I ever wrote and finished was actually because I got into the second round of the Sundance Episodic Lab and they wanted pages and I had no pages. So it was like, all right, got to write a 60-page script in 4 weeks. But as far as some things that I have done to break it up into pieces that look more manageable, next to every scene on my outline, I'll rough out how many pages I think it's going to be. And that makes it seem easier because let's say I have set aside this whole weekend and it's Friday and it's 10 a.m. on Friday and I really don't want to write, but I look and I'm like, okay, I need to write the first scene of the teaser and that's going to be about a page. Well, I can sit down and write a page. It's kind of like the Pomodoro technique. You can do anything for 25 minutes.
Right.
And then once you start rolling, that gets the juices flowing and you can start writing. The other thing is being okay with it being a bad page. I mean, you can edit a bad page, not a blank one. And I know people say that all the time, but it's really true. what I really see the outline process doing is, in the same way that you're just turning a beat sheet into an outline, you're just kind of turning an outline into a script. It's like you're changing it into a form that now you can actually start the work, right? The first draft is kind of the basis. So I think those couple of things, as well as really making sure that like I have the time set aside, that I'm not trying to do this on a weekend where I have 12 other things. It's like, no, this weekend is the script weekend. And it's as if I have a writer's room deadline on Monday and I have to turn that in. And come hell or high water, there's going to be pages. Really helps.
You have so much good, insightful, like practical tips. Honestly, I just feel like you're giving so much knowledge, and I hope that, you know, the right people are going to watch this interview and sort of be like, oh, that's what I can do. Because I'm similar in the way where I'll put my notes in my outline and then do like an actionable sort of like change right under it. So then I don't have to do this in my brain for all the things. It's there and I'm good, move on, you know, or something pops up and I'm like, oh yeah, add that there. And then it's out of my brain and I'm not going, don't forget that, don't forget that, don't forget that, you know? So I've
Believe me, the number of times that I've woken up at like 3 a.m. to write something on my phone because otherwise I won't be able to sleep. Yep. That's just how it goes.
See, I do that. And then I go, I won't forget. I forgot. or you write something down, you're like, this is so genius. And then the next day you're like, what?
I have recorded my own dreams. Like I'll wake up and I'll dream journal. I'll be like, I came up with this great idea. And then it's just like, one was two characters, Melissa McCarthy and who's Miss Congeniality?
Sandra Bullock.
Yeah, Melissa McCarthy and Sandra Bullock as rats, and it's a buddy cop comedy, but they're rats.
Genius.
I woke up and I was like, genius. And then 3 hours later, I was like, what is this?
It's the best dream movie ever. We're going to wrap this up for you. You've already given so much great knowledge and tips. Is there any advice that you've ever been given or advice that you share with other writers or emerging creators or anything like that, that you feel like has affected you or you feel is like just something that's really helpful to other people besides everything that you've already shared?
Thing that really changed my perspective as well was my career coach had me watch the movie Moneyball. Mm-hmm. And I am not a sports person at all. But if you haven't seen it, it's Brad Pitt and essentially, I forget the other actor's name. He's now, of course, famous, but this nerdy guy builds the perfect baseball team, not out of everyone that hits a home run, but out of people that can get on base. And that can be from anything. That can be from, you know, getting a foul, the pitcher pitches wrong, all of this stuff. They just have to get on base. And I watch that movie about once a year. And it reminds me that it's not about the home runs, right? It's not about the Austin Film Festival. It's not about any of these things. It's about consistently getting on base. And if you consistently get on base, you're going to win the game. And a celebrity that I really respect, I won't name him, but I did write him a letter once asking for advice. And in his letter, he said, the only reason, yes, he wrote me back. He wrote me back.
Okay.
And he said the only reason why he became a famous actor was because he was the last person in the room at the casting calls. Everyone else, by the time he was in his late 30s, early 40s, had given up. And he had stuck around long enough that he was the person that started to get the roles. And so I really think that it's about persistence, it's about perseverance, and it's about getting on base however you can.
You're just full of nuggets. These are just soundbite nuggets, people.
Karen Kushner would be so proud of me with my nuggets.
Got it. And then, you know, final thing is what are your goals for this next year? I know the industry is kind of in a weird flux right now. What are you hoping for? What are you optimistic about as we move forward?
The next thing on my plate is actually breaking out the script that started it all, a script that I lovingly call my BDSM rom-com. It's an hour-long dramedy about the New York City underground BDSM scene. And I am bringing it out of the drawer and polishing it up. And then I would love to circulate with that to kind of everyone that's in my circle, whether it comes to production companies, managers, etc., and just get some reads on my stuff and get people excited about this next phase of my career. I mean, I'm always applying to programs. I'm always, anytime I have a new script, reaching out to the production companies that I've worked with in the past to see, if they're interested in moving forward. But that's the big thing, as well as developing this feature with Josephson. I'm very excited about it. And, hey, who knows? Maybe you'll be seeing that in theaters 5 years from now. It's always
Awesome.
a long process, but I'm optimistic.
Good. Well, I have a feeling that you're going to be in the long game of this industry. So I love that this interview is sort of like the beginning phases that we get to see you now because you're about to take off and blast off. So very exciting about your career. We are super happy to have you on the ISA development slate and top 25 screeners to watch. And we truly see big things for you. So thank you so much for doing this interview. And we will talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I hope I was helpful.